I hate meetings. I really do. They are one of the least favorite parts of my work. Now, you're gonna say like, okay, everyone hates meetings. Well, I'm a business consultant. I'm an exit planner, and I help people get their businesses ready to sell. My entire work life is meetings, and part of the reason that I do what I do is because I try to keep other people from having to have constant meetings. Every one of my meetings, they're very targeted and specific, and I don't necessarily want you worrying about that. But everybody else, again, you struggle through meetings constantly. And part of what I'm going to talk about here today is that there's a CEO that is going to be highlighted here that has identified that he was drowning in meetings, his people were drowning in meetings, and made a change, which I'm going to recommend all of you take a look at and do your best to make whatever adjustments you can. But also, we're going to cover some of the tips and trips and things that I do with my clients that specifically help them with getting their meetings run better, but also find a way to get rid of their meetings. And then also some meetings we absolutely protect. Okay. So again, my name is Ryan Helm. I'm a business coach who works out of West Michigan around the country. I come here on YouTube sharing information I share with my clients, and I hope to earn your subscription. So let's get into it here. Again, link is always going to be in the description. So be sure to go check that out. It's from Inc.com. CEO of Southwest Airlines, again, makes a huge change. Now, this is, again, it goes crazy and dumb, simple, but it's actually brilliant. And again, it starts later here. But here's the thing. What he identified is something that I talk to people about consistently, and that is when what is the time you need to protect and when is your best time to be in a meeting. And then on top of this, though, and this is something that I know that they're not doing because I can just tell through the tenor of the actual article here, there's some other things that we need to be identifying is like, why are we having this meeting? How much does this meeting cost? And a few other things. So let's take a look here. All right. So, yay, Southwest Airlines doing their thing. They should have a meeting about how to make it where people aren't fighting to get seats, but that's a separate thing. Ever feel you attend so many meetings you can't get any work done? I think that's almost everybody, right? We have meetings about meetings and meetings for meetings. And that is, by the way, as we're going through this, I'm going to sprinkle in some my thoughts on meetings as a whole. And one of the things that meetings exist to close communication gaps, right? You're going to have a meeting because somebody over here has information that somebody over here needs. What you should be identifying during that time frame is, why do we need to have a meeting to get that information over? What can we do to keep that from being a thing, right? Engineer that communication flow so we don't have to have a meeting, right? That's one of the first things that we talk about with my clients. Again, George is about to try something new, an idea, again, some would consider crazy, and was born from a dumb, simple technique he learned from former CEO mentors. Starting in 2026, he's not taking any meetings on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday afternoon. So midweek in the afternoons, he's not taking meetings. Let's see what this is about. So when you first start, it's easy to confuse business with going to meetings and leadership. And that's something I absolutely coach my folks about. Just because you're, again, having a meeting to have a meeting is not leadership. Meetings should be focused and have an actual agenda specifically meant to drive some sort of action within the company. Because when people are in meetings, what aren't they doing? They aren't working on the business and making you money. They're in a meeting. So we want to try to make sure that those meetings are as few as possible. And when you do have them, that they are focused and their agenda, like objective driven. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Again, he's got his book out here. It's not leadership because you got to focus on what you can do. The most important thing, that is the work that you're doing for the company that only you can do. Again, as a CEO, as a manager, as a vice president, as as a supervisor. There's work that you're hired specifically to do because that's your job to do. And when you're in a meeting, you're not doing your job. Again, if you don't create time to do that, you're just grinding. And I think we've all been here, especially this is one of the things that just drove me absolutely nuts about the mentality leading up into COVID and then through COVID. We have meetings about meetings about meetings, right? And a meeting leads to another meeting, and you're never, ever getting to a point where someone is making a decision. Or, and this is another key point here, folks, when you are having your meetings, and let me just flip back over here so I get full screen on this because this is an important part here, that if you're having your meeting, one of the things that I want you to just keep in mind here is that, and the decisions are only being made in meetings, you need to take a look at that because your team, you as an individual, your team, whatever happens to be, they should be making decisions at their level. If you're having meetings so that somebody else is making a decision so that you don't have to, that's something that somewhere in your system, the training, the guardrails, whatever protections you have needs to get figured out because that's slowing everything down, and then it's taking people away from their work, which is not only ineffective and inefficient, it's frankly just annoying as hell. You want to be, people should be able to make decisions at their level. And you need to find a way to push that decision authority down further and further. And that's one of the things that we don't do. We really suck at it. And we need to get better at, okay, folks, is that just trust that your people can make decisions and push them up there. Okay, so with that, let's keep rolling here. Now, Jordan's advice is more than a productivity hack. It's based on sound research and principles of emotional intelligence, namely that an overload of meetings leads not only to lost productivity, but feelings of stress and being overwhelmed. In fact, again, the author's been practicing this. Now, one of the things that I have, and it's identified, I use Google Calendars for all of my work within the business here to manage my time, right? And I have work scheduled at different times for the way that my brain and my body typically function, right? When I'm at my best. My most creative, my most productive times are in the morning, and that's when I hammer out as much work as I can. I don't have meetings until basically later in the morning. When I have to work with clients, we work, we make sure that we have our meetings scheduled at their peak performance time. Right? We always take a look at that, and that's what they're talking about here. So again, just another tip out there for you. When you find yourself your most productive, right? When you can hammer out the most work, you should not be in a meeting. Like at all. You should not be in a meeting. That's when you should be nailing your work and hammering that out. When do you want to have your meetings? It's when you are able to make your best decisions. That's usually different than when you're able to grind and do your most work. Okay. So just understand the difference there. All right. So why is scheduling times for no meeting so helpful, and how can you apply, again, technique in your own work? Let's dive in. Again, protect your peak productivity, like we were just talking about here. Faster alone, further together. It's the truth. The proverb is clear. Working solo allows you to move more quickly, but there are some goals you can only achieve when you work as a team. How do you make the most of your meetings? And again, circadian rhythms. You can look at this here. Many of us have natural productivity spikes in our day, and those spikes occur between 9 and 11 and 1 and 3, which happens to be when lots of people are in meetings. So that is why, again, with my clients, we intentionally do not schedule meetings during those times. We want people working. So one of the best known practices for my clients actually is, and again, it's for the leadership teams, not necessarily for the supervisors unless they're in, are lunch meetings. Like they have lunch meetings. They're specifically during that time frame, 11:30 to 12:30, so that folks come in and they have very targeted meetings during that time because they're in between their peak productivity times. So they want to make sure that they're there. They got to have lunch anyways, and then they just work together and figure that out. Doesn't work for every team, but it's one of the examples that I say is like find that time frame that is in between your productivity spikes. That's when your meetings should be scheduled. Okay. By the other side of this too is also during the week, right? That frees this individual up, the CEO, from Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. They're not worried during the middle of the day or earlier in the day about being prepared to come into the meeting. They do their work. Then in the afternoons, I know they have a bit more space to allow things to process and think about the work that they need to do. Spend time really just with that, let the gray matter kind of absorb all that time. Okay. And that is a really, really important piece of this that folks need to have, again, within your business, where you can protect your time. Many people that I've worked for over the years, what I've done is I've actually gone and again, I've had their assistant block off time on their calendar. They're thinking it's going to be a meeting when in reality it's just us spending some time just kind of, talking more than anything. I was going to use a different phrase. I try not to curse on the channel, folks, here, but shooting the breeze. Let's go with that. So you give them time to kind of think and just allow the gray matter to breathe a little bit, right? Because they had been going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. It's not no way to do things. Okay. Let's go to the last piece here, and then okay. So how to design your meeting schedule. This is the piece here. How can you apply this to your own work? Remember, again, meetings are not the enemy. Again, meetings exist to close communication gaps. They are vital. They're very important. Too many meetings are the problem, and bad meetings are especially the issue. To limit your meeting time and make sure your meeting's productive, ask yourself, when's your most productive days and times? Can I create a no meeting rule and block this time off for deep, uninterrupted work? Can you do that? If you're able to do that within your business, that's something you should absolutely be doing. Okay. If not, I'm telling you, even if you can scratch out a half hour to 45 minutes where this is blocked off, I'm not available for meetings during this time, you're going to be amazed at how much more productive and frankly, just better you're going to feel, right? That's really the goal of this too. We want you feeling great, energized. So when it is time to work, you can really hammer through stuff. In my business, what's the highest leverage work? That is the work that gives me the biggest return on investment of time. How can I schedule more time for this type of work? So if you are, and again, depending on where you're at, if you're a supervisor and your best work, again, with the biggest return is making sure that your team's schedules are correct, that they have they're organized, trained, and equipped to be able to be their absolute best. You want to be able to have that time blocked off and free for meetings to make sure they have everything they need so they can be successful, right? That's the idea. And when can I schedule blank time on my calendar to take care of those high important tasks I haven't managed to do or that I can just use to think, right? And that's what I was talking about here. Again, the rest of the articles, links in the description. Be sure to go check that out, folks. Now we're just going to talk about the things that I talk about with my clients here, then specifically what we do when it comes to meetings and what the priorities are and how we manage those things. So number one that we have every single meeting that my clients have, they put in the corner, like up over, let's say over here, right over here. If this was the meeting on the agenda, how much it actually costs. What do I mean by that? We say, how long's the meeting? What's the, what is our hourly rate for everybody that's going to be in the room? And then we also throw on like a standard overhead charge of like the 35 to 40%. We just, here you go, which is the markup rate that we have for all the overhead costs, right? That are going to be there. And they put that number up there, right? That lives up here. That number exists to remind them that, hey, the company is investing money in this. So if the return on investment for this meeting is not at least 5x, why are we having it? Okay, so that's one of the things I have to justify the meeting cost and what that looks like. Okay, so that's the number one thing we have on there. The second thing is every single meeting has an objective that they have to meet. Like here's what we're here to do, right? And they start with that statement saying, we are going to come to a decision on the following thing. When, if, and let's say they have 2 hours scheduled for this meeting to be able to talk through stuff, give time, blah, 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 blah. If they get in there and everyone kind of looks, says, yeah, the decision is this, they're done. They don't say, oh, well, since I have you guys, we're going to have this conversation. No, it's a bunch of crap. You're there to do this. We get this done. Meeting's over. So if it's done in 15 minutes, y'all just got an hour and 45 minutes back, right? That's the idea. We get the objective and we take care of it. And the reason we do that too, and I have to talk to a lot of CEOs on this, is that just because you have everybody in front of you doesn't mean that you have the right to then have additional conversations. Just because they had that time blocked off and they were prepared for this meeting does not mean that you can now have them talk about this meeting. Like that's not okay. That is not okay and should not be acceptable. Why? Because they aren't prepared. It's a lack of professional courtesy to have people come to a meeting and then talk and then say, hey, while you're here, let's talk about this other thing. They're not prepared. It's wrong. Just don't do it. All right. And it drives me nuts when I see people doing that thing. Okay. So there's that spot. Additionally, the other objective that exists in every single meeting is we're going to look at every meeting and figure out how we can engineer this thing out of existence. Like the goal, again, the goal that's underneath that is identifying ways that we can make sure that the information, right, we're closing communication gaps. There's information that needs to be transitioned from one person to another. How do we engineer our processes and systems to make sure that information flows without having to have a person involved, right? Having to get a group of people for a meeting. Can we do that in some way, shape, or form? So that's something that we identify. Like that is a goal that they have on there. Or can we get a couple people out of the meeting? If there's 7 people at this meeting, but we can get it down to 3, just 3 people in this meeting, is that work? Because what does that do? It keeps them at their job working instead of sitting in a meeting and maybe piping up for 5 minutes and being stuck there for an hour and a half. Those are the things that it's constantly, how can we whittle away at the impact of this meeting on the business and on the people? Because meetings, everyone hates them, right? The last thing that I really talk about with my clients and specifically about meetings, that there are specific meetings that have to exist and they're structured in a very particular way. And it has to do with what's our weekly, basically what is the weekly leadership meeting? There is a standard amount of time and a standard rhythm of exactly what's communicated, why it's communicated, and who needs to be there. and it's a rhythm that is locked in and does not change. Okay, that is protected at all costs, because that is the most important meeting that they have that week. And we go over the structure. If you want to learn more, go to summitbusinessguides.com. You can check it out, and how I help my clients build businesses fast that grow faster than they ever thought possible. There you go. Almost, I'm still struggling with that hook. It's been years now, and I still stumble over it. Anyways, the other thing is the morning stand up meeting. And it happens at every shift. So there's one in the morning, there's one in the afternoon, there was one in the later evening if you have 3 shifts. But there's every shift start, there is a meeting that happens. And it's less than 10 minutes. It's literally get in and you're asking the couple questions here. How'd yesterday go? Here's what we have for today. And what do you need for tomorrow? Like, those 3 questions are really where you're at. And you're simply just identifying how things went yesterday. Everybody prepared for today when these get done? And is there anything I can do now to make sure tomorrow is successful? Like, that's the idea for that morning meeting. Those 2 meetings, those 2, when it comes to operational, are protected and will not, and are not allowed to not happen. Okay. Beyond that, every other meeting is I'm telling you, exists for now. The goal is to get rid of them. Okay. So that, again, folks, as we looked here on the article, the CEO of Southwest identified that, hey, I'm drowning in meetings. My people are drowning in meetings. If I'm in the meetings, that means other folks are there and they're not doing their work. And that's not helpful. That's not good. And we don't want to have those things. So he making an active choice with himself to say, hey, here's the times I'm not doing meetings. I can promise you the directive has been made that his vice presidents, right, all the VPs, all of the directors, again, supervisors, managers, they've all been given a similar directive. You will identify time where you will not have meetings. You will block that off and protect. I promise you that's the thing. And the more companies that do that, I think the better they are. And the last piece on this here before we wrap up, because I want to kind of close off the meeting piece and then get into the this last bit, right? And this is an important part. One of the main reasons that meetings really happen is because people aren't able to make decisions. They are not. They don't get to make decisions under their purview. You as a boss, right, as an owner, as a CEO, as a leader, director, manager, whatever, you want to push decision-making authority as low as possible, right, down to where they're accountable for it, or where it makes sense. But you want to push that off there. And if you are too nervous about giving other people that decision authority, that's a you problem. That means there's training and insight and growth and mentoring that you need to do with your teams as well as yourself, because that means there's something going on that's keeping you from extending that down. The reason I'm saying this is every time that you push you push a decision off, you are losing money. Like, that's what's happening on the whole. You are losing money. You are making people less effective. You're making them less efficient. Frankly, more frustrated. If every time I want to go do something, I got to ask you for permission. Is it okay if I do this? What the hell am I here for then? Why do I even need to exist? Right. And that's what I want you thinking about with your folks. Push decision-making as low as possible. And you're going to be amazed at how much more effective and efficient your entire organization runs. Okay. So with that, I appreciate everybody who's hung out this long. Hopefully I earned your subscription today. Again, you can go learn about me and how I help businesses grow faster than they ever thought possible as well. Again, I'm an exit planner. I help people get their businesses ready to sell at multiples they don't believe that they were able to get. Go check out down on the link down in the description. It's summitbusinessguys.com. Take care. We'll see you next time.